Board of Health meeting for April 23rd, 2025. In attendance this evening are myself, Matt Wason, Kevin Davis, Dan Kane, and our health agent, Jim Gareffi. We have a quorum, so we will start our meeting. However, the first item on the agenda is a public hearing, 7 p.m. for 255 Great Road. I do not see anybody in attendance to represent that. Therefore, we will wait a few minutes and see if somebody joins us.
Mr. Chair, do you want to administratively take a look at meeting minutes?
That's legal. We have meeting minutes from March 26th, 2025. All three of us were present for the meeting. Have you had a chance to review them?
Oh, yeah.
I see nods. Any changes, or would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Sorry, Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Dan Kane.
Dan Kane votes yes.
Matt Wason votes yes. The minutes for March 26th, 2025 are approved as written. Next, let's go ahead and open up the board member updates if anybody has something. Kevin?
I have nothing.
Not helping, Kevin. Dan?
Sorry. I can think longer.
I had a couple questions for Francis. Unfortunately, do we know if he's just delayed or if is he not available this evening?
I do not have any word from him.
As far as I know, he's supposed to be here.
All right.
He sent an email just a couple hours ago about a investigation he was doing, but I don't know if that has kept him or what's going on.
I'll ask the chair. I'm not sure if you had any information. Do we have any updates on the air quality monitoring stations that we were having through the state grant?
I have looked at the map online to see the data.
Okay. Is it there? So it's up? They're running?
It is there. There's a website where you can look at the sensors.
Yep. Okay, great.
From what I recall correctly, it was it was good. The numbers were good. So wherever we put them, they ended up having reasonably good readings for a good piece of time. So it's a bit of a confusing scale. You have to kind of look into it and to kind of look it up somewhere because it gives you like, oh, your score is a 12, and you're like, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's like, oh, well, 0 to 50 is actually the lowest category, so that's a satisfactory category. So the numbers appeared to be quite low based upon what I was looking at.
And this was PM 2.5 sensors?
Yes.
<clears throat>
You can look. It's actually map.purpleair.com, and you can zoom in on it and see the sensors. And it looks like the sensors are still there, so I'm not sure. I assume they haven't been asked for back, but they're all still available and firing data off. But we have somebody in the audience. Are you here for our 7 o'clock public hearing on 255 Great Road? If so, please raise your hand and we can get you into the panel. Megan, do you know if Carlos Ferreira was intending to join the meeting? That's who wrote up the paperwork for this public hearing.
Yeah, I got an email from him this morning, and I gave him all the information with the Zoom link and everything. So he and someone else was tagged on it. It was Sandor at andconstruction.com, so I'm not exactly sure who that is. But as far as I know, they would have supposed to be here.
Yeah, hi, hello.
Yes, who is this? We can hear you.
This is Mahesh. I was hoping an engineer from our an engineer who we are working with will probably attend the call. So I got the information from him. So I'm just joining and listening. And for regarding a permits for temple construction that is going on right now.
Is that at 255 Great Road?
Yes, 255 Great Road. Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Mahesh.
The engineer has not joined the call, so we've been waiting.
Okay. Let me check on that. Sorry about that. So
Thank you. In the interest of time, Francis, do you have any updates for us that are 3 minutes or shorter?
You might have not seen it yet, but we did get a foodborne illness complaint recently regarding Taka. It was investigated. It's inconclusive. There was no point sources that would indicate that there was foodborne illness. It was from a dinner on Friday the 18th, and we just got it today. So it kind of is a little too much of a time delay to be able to pin something down as well, because between the quantity of meat served over the weekend and different staffing on the weekend, it changes the equation a little bit. But
yeah. And I assume that means they or you haven't heard of any other reports since Friday.
We have not. By now, we most likely, if there was lab confirmed, we would have received it in Maven. We received signage today for the Yellow Tulip project, which in the fall we joined with Emerson Hospital to engage in the Yellow Tulip project, which is mental health awareness and promoting against stigma. So we planted 100 tulips in front of the library. And I'm pretty proud of myself. 79, 80-ish did grow. So nicely done. So we got signs today, and we'll do a kind of public education campaign through a press release and try to put some stuff out on social media as well.
And the rabbits didn't take after the tulips and eat them?
I thought it was going to be worse, but
That's awesome.
Yeah, they love those
Yeah.
in my house.
Yeah, they do.
They leave the daffodils alone, though.
Hence the reason why we plant daffodils around all the tulips. While we're waiting for the engineer, which we have now come to time on, Mr. Chair, may I offer a couple of comments about the print?
About the what?
The print that he submitted.
Oh. Unless you're just going to end up repeating yourself, I guess you can go ahead and say something.
Yeah, I'd like to get it on the record that using the colors red and green, which I'm guessing that's what the color changes are, because I have a real challenge seeing red and green. And
Mhm.
right now, I can barely see anything if there are any changes on that paper. So if there are changes, the next time an engineer submits something, could I please suggest that they use a different color unless that's the industry standard? Now I went and looked and I didn't see an industry standard on print suggesting red and green
Yeah.
as the primary colors for suggesting certain changes done to a diagram. So I don't care. Use purple, use, something. But I can't see a lot of the changes that are on that page right now.
Got it. There is very little red and green actually. There's only one pertinent red thing in the upper right drawing, which is some measurements, which are almost impossible to see no matter what color they are. And then the green is a prominent because it shows clearly it does show the new sewer pipe and tanks. So, heard.
That's all that I would like to say.
Yeah. Megan, if you could kind of take mental note of that, since you see this stuff before we ever do as well, if you remember to spot something like that and let the engineer know that something better than that would be helpful.
Got it.
I mean,
Thank you.
It's pale. I usually like it when they're at least like a big, bold, thick line, but in this case, it's kind of pale and green.
And if I'm seeing the green, it almost, again, the line thickness is really difficult. And it's also like almost fluorescent in color, I think,
It is.
maybe.
It
And
is,
so
yes.
that's really challenging to see on a white background for somebody who has this issue. And Megan, you weren't here the last time I brought it up. I brought it up when we were reviewing the big office park over on Taylor Street. They submitted something one time with a faint red and faint green, and I was like, I can't see it. So
Mahesh has joined back and he might want to speak.
Oh, go ahead, Mahesh.
I just reached out to the engineer. He's having some technical issues. He's just restarting his computer. He will be joining momentarily. Sorry for the delay.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that. Tell you what, I'm going to swap it around because it won't take long. We'll do the 710 ID decision support tool, since that's under my control. Here's our current update. COVID-19, just a new variant that's predominant. It's hard to keep track. Every month we get a new variant that's popped up and becomes the majority. And pretty much every time the message is the vaccinations still cover it. Highly infectious, not too serious of illness for most people, but always the same concerns when it gets into those populations that might be more troubled by the illness. Our weekly case counts were down to 0 for a little end of March and start of April, and pop back up to 2 cases. Vaccination rate, as previously mentioned, stuck at 31%. Probably not going to change much between now and next season. Arbovirus, the mosquitoes are out. I've seen them, so that's going to come onto the radar. Testing for that begins in June, so we won't have anything to report until then. But take care. Now's the good time to make sure you don't have standing water laying around, so that those mosquito eggs can be laid and hatched and thus cause you problems for the rest of the season. So look around your property, try to make sure you don't have breeding ground desirables for the mosquitoes. Influenza, looks like we're kind of wrapping up that season. Again, the report from Massachusetts is low as of last week. And our vaccination rate, again, probably peaked at 51%. Doubt that's going to change. And then similarly, RSV has now dropped to below 2% for positive testing of that. So we likely made it through respiratory illness season, and now we have a brief window before we kind of start monitoring our arboviruses more seriously. Any questions? Great. The only other mention that we've been highlighting is, excuse me, our H5 bird flu. Not much of an update. There have been 70 human cases in the country. The closest to us is a poultry case in Ohio. and cattle case in Michigan. So it's still kind of not in our area, but the same warnings just kind of keep going around. Monitor any pets that you have for sudden illness, and if you are out in the nature areas and see dead birds, you can report those just so that they can be monitored. We now have a couple of people in the audience. If we get those added, there we go. Carlos Ferrer, please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Carlos Ferreira from MP Design Consultants. I'm sorry that I was late. I just got home and somebody was waiting for me and I got distracted.
All right, so for the record, we will jump back to our 7 o'clock public hearing for 255 Great Road, and take us away. If you can, you should be able to share your screen and show us plans as you talk.
I just promoted him, so it might just take a moment.
Thank you.
Hi, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, just go ahead and zoom it in for the parts you were talking about so we can see more clearly. And then before you caught on, we were discussing the fact that not everybody can see red and green as clearly. So please, if you could try to like point out specifically what you want us to see, not just depending on the color.
Right. So what happened is that they transforming this into some sort of a church, and they have like lots of like places where they need like a grease trap. So the grease trap would start over at the kitchen. So they have like a kitchen in here, and this had to like go like through the entire building. And we had, set like specific elevations so we could be outside of the building at a proper elevation in here. I guess there was some obstructions and different problems that they had inside of the building, that by the time this pipe got out, it was like 10 inches too low of the building. So what we're proposing in here for this project, it was to add like a grease trap with a pump tank in here. So it will be like a tank like similar to this. So this will be like a grease trap, and then we will have like this compartment for the pump. And then from here, it will go to an additional grease trap, and then it will go gravity into the septic tank. So we will raise with this tank in here, we will raise 10 inches to this tank. And then from here, it will go gravity into the existing system that they had. So this is what we're asking, to add like this additional tank and pump it to the grease tap. The other thing that the owner mentioned to us is that I guess in about like 8 months, they're gonna have like a sewer into the street, and eventually all this is gonna be connected into the sewer line.
Okay. Before we go to questions, Jim and/or Francis, can you give us your evaluation, please?
I can start, Francis, if you like. Okay. So the building used to be, I think, the old DCU Credit Union building, and they are converting it to a church. So they added a kitchen in the facility, and Title V requires not an outside grease trap. So the plumbing code requires grease traps inside the building. Title V requires a grease trap outside the building in connection with the septic system. So when they were proposing to do the kitchen, I worked with the general contractor to make sure that we got an elevation of the pipe coming out of the building that would allow that tank to then go gravity into the existing system. And again, as the engineer mentioned, something happened, that elevation didn't work out. So now they have to essentially pump the grease trap waste to another grease trap, essentially, and then let it flow into the system. There's a section of Title V that talks about pumping ahead of a septic tank. And generally speaking, Title V doesn't want you to pump ahead of a septic tank is a septic tank should be a relatively quiet place. Water should flow in, really shouldn't stir up the tank because you don't really want to stir the solids up that you've got to settle down. So it provides parameters by which a board can allow pumps before the tank. So the most typical type we see is an ejector pump in a basement. And generally speaking, if they're less than 25% of the flow, that's an acceptable design for that system. So again, most of what we see are less than 25% of the flow in a residential situation. It talks about, in all other cases other than residential, that pumping ahead of the tank is prohibited unless approved by the Board of Health. So that's why we're here with the question. This is kind of in all the years I've worked for the health department, I've never had one of these come up. I think the proposed design, as he has it, essentially the key difference in a grease trap versus a septic tank is the way the T's are set up in the tank. So, Carlos, I don't know if you could slide the screen over a bit just so they can see your detail again. And if you look at the tank, the inlet T comes in and it goes down halfway to the tank. And the outlet T, you can see before the pump chamber section, is just a foot off the bottom of the tank. Again, what they're trying to do is make sure you get clarified water before it goes out into the grease trap. So he's essentially done this twice, once before he pumps it, and then lets the water settle, and then it's set up as a grease trap again and flow into the gravity of the tank. So again, it's unfortunate that we had to get to this point to have two tanks, but I think it'll provide the grease trap protection to the system that it's needed. It's just kind of a different way of doing it.
All right, thank you for that. Francis, did you have any other details to add?
I do not.
And I will open it up to the board for questions. Kevin.
So where is the septic tank on this design, or is it not, and it's going out to the street sewage?
The septic tank, I mean, if you look at it, this is like the vicinity of the project in here on the back. So we are connecting from our tank is going to go into the line, and then this is the septic tank. And I think like this system, it's also pumped, right? I mean, this is like, I don't know the details of like the existing system, but this is like the tank in here.
So that little section of the plan is a piece of the existing as-built plan for the septic system the way it's currently installed. And so I believe it has two tanks in series that then go to a pump chamber that pump to those two leach fields that you can see.
So our connection is gonna make it into the pipe that leaves the building.
My other question is, for the sewer regulations, and we're not the body that handles the sewer regulations or anything like that. But I'm asking Jim if he might know, or Francis if he might know, grease traps that are there, are they going to disconnect at the second, or on this print? It looks like the second tank there, the after the pump tank. Is that where they're going to separate it and then send it out to the street? Or is this on the backside and they're going to have to figure out some weird way around the front of the facility?
I believe the plumbing does come out in the back of the building. And so each sewer department's a little different. Some require that you have a grease trap in place because the grease trap also protects the municipal sewer, so you don't get big greasy clogs in the pipes. So when they go to tie this in, I'm sure that'll be a conversation that they'll have with the sewer department about. You'll probably, if I had to guess, maybe they put a manhole where that connection is coming out, and then run a new line to the street. So you'll get both the protection of the grease trap and the regular sewer coming out, so they can grab both of those connections in one. That's just my guess, though.
And then it will put like another one on the driveway here, and then it will feed the street.
That sounds about right.
So
at that point, I mean, because everything is in place, I mean, we could eliminate this tank and then make things work gravity if the sewer on the street is deep enough.
Has the pump tank and everything else already been installed? And this is just paperwork catching up to us?
Nothing's installed. We try to get approvals for it. The only thing that is
Oh,
installed
okay.
is the pipe in here that is too low right now to make it work gravity.
Got it. And so, Jim, your reference to this is that it needs board approval because there's a pump before the pump. It's like two pumps before the pump.
There's a pump before the septic tank. So these two tanks that are being added will then tie into the line that goes to the existing septic tank.
Okay.
So it's pumping ahead of the septic tank.
So what we try to do in here to with reference to what Jim mentioned is that instead of eliminating this tank, like let's say we didn't install this tank in here, we'll be pumping to the septic tank. Well, what I did in here, I added an additional tank to stabilize that. So when it goes to the septic tank, it goes gravity and not pumped.
So it's not as much force going into the tank. Therefore, what Jim was saying, it doesn't stir the tank up and it tries to keep the solids where the solids are supposed to be.
Right.
Got it. Now, I'm sorry. It
Yep.
It took me half a second to do that. Also with the concern that if in 8 months we're hooking this property up to sewage and things like that, is there anything that we might recommend that they do to make the transition easier to the sewage when they go along so it reduces the cost for this facility? Or is that a future cost that they have to deal with?
I think the connection will probably be determined how they're going to make that connection by the sewer department. One additional thing that they'll need to do is the septic tank and the pump chamber that's there. They'll need to decommission those as part of the connection to sewer. But whether the sewer department likes this design the way it is and feels it's getting better protection for the grease in the street line and just has them put a manhole and wrap it around, I think that'll be a sewer commission question.
Okay, I'm done.
Dan, questions?
Let me start with a clarifying question. In the letter you submitted April 17, 2025, you stated the installed pipe was approximately 10 inches higher than the approved design, but you said here it was 10 inches lower. So we'll start with, is the pipe coming out of the building 10 inches too high or 10 inches too low?
Too low.
Too low. Okay. So yeah, your letter of the 17th has the opposite. So that's what I was trying to understand of.
Yep.
Obviously too high is easier to fix than too low.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, attention to detail is always important.
Yep.
Second question obviously is, it sounds like this pipe coming out is new construction. I always feel bad for folks have to come back before us to fix things that didn't go right. I was just curious about the oversight for this installation. Can you talk a little bit more of how this ended up being almost a foot out of place?
It's they had to, like, all these pipes and lines that you see on green in here. I mean, I don't know if it's like very clear. It was all like it had to be trenched with saw cut and trench on an existing building. And then we found other obstructions that were not in, like different footings and things that happened inside of the building that made it the final layout. And I guess, I can even say maybe the contractor, didn't pay attention on the elevations very carefully. And then all this, now it's concreted. So that would be you have to break everything else to try to adjust these grades again.
Okay.
And then as you can see, we also have, as Jim pointed out, we could only go by like all the existing grease traps inside. It's just because we have the septic system and we have to have like also a grease trap on the outside of the building. But I mean, I wanted to point it up that, like this is like a sink, has like a proper, under the plumbing code, this is a grease trap. And I guess like there's some other devices in here that generate grease. This is an additional grease trap. This is another grease trap in here. And then there's another grease trap. So there's like 4 other grease traps inside of the building. Then they're gonna have to be maintained and so I mean I think like there was a failure on the contractor in here to keep the elevation, but what we're proposing definitely protects the overall performance of the system.
Do you have a maintenance contract in place for both interior and exterior grease traps?
I have to. We can add this to it, but I mean, usually a grease trap has to be like inspected and pumped like on a regular basis. Like probably every month. I mean, I don't know, like like the amount of like grease that they were generating to this. How much is the use of this? This is very unusual because it's a church. On a restaurant is probably like every month, but this I would say that they're gonna start with like a probably every month to pump this, and if there's not enough grease on it, probably extend it to 3 months or so.
For Francis and Jim, for exterior grease traps, do we have a expectation that they have a service contract in place to maintain the grease traps, protect the system, and then eventually from the sewer commission to protect the sewer system?
Yep.
I guess we've never required a specific contract. They do need to maintain them.
All right, I think I'm good. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Dan. I had a few more questions, of course. I'm assuming the added volume that's anticipated coming out of the system is not going to negatively impact the overall septic design that is pre-existing.
We did go through that with them to make sure that what they're proposing works with the septic system capacity.
Okay. And then I think you answered it, but basically all of the green lines that you're showing here are actually already in place, buried in concrete, except for what's outside in these new grease tanks. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
okay.
Correct.
And I was just curious, I saw them coming to all these bathrooms. Is that just, they just thought just any old bathroom or any old sink room off of, like that lower sink room, the upper sink room there? Is that just anticipation that they could have grease production? So they required that to be put in?
It's a funny setup, like this thing. I mean, I think like they have like particular idols, and then for every idol, they cook for the individual idol. So like at every stage of like this, they're gonna generate some sort of a grease because it's involved.
So you have more adjacent sinks to that because you still do have some production going on in that area. Great.
Yes.
And then my last question was kind of about this future look of the sewer system. You kind of made the comment, if the sewer line is deep enough, then X will happen or Y will happen. I'm hoping that we would know how deep the sewer line is supposed to be on that street already, correct?
I can investigate that. I didn't have access. I mean, it was just the client that informed to me that there was a sewer being placed on the street.
I think it's already there.
Yeah. I
could be wrong, but that part of the street's already been torn up and worked on. So I think that line is actually in place already. So I think my hesitation is just looking to the future. If this is obviously a complex project already, and I look at it and go, boy, wouldn't it be nice if that had all gone out the front of the building at the, for the future consideration. But now you've got all that plumbing in. But I would still say, would there be a less than 1 year option where you, I don't know what Jim would say, where you actually go out the front of the building and put it into a tank that does not connect to the septic system, that's a closed system that you then have to pump everything out of just to make it easier to connect to the future sewer? I don't know. So you could say, no, that's not possible. Or at the very least, go figure out if the sewer line is deep enough and figure out if there's an adjustment you'd want to make, even if it's something simple like can you wrap around the the southern part of the building on this drawing as opposed to, as you described, going around the top, and would you want to reorient those tanks at all to facilitate that future connection? I just wouldn't want 8 months from now to look at it and be like, oh, we now have to put in a third thing, or we missed it by 3 inches or something like that.
I can contact DPW and get copies of those plans and find out what would be like the future layout of like the sewer line.
The reason, and Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
the reason why I asked my question about that was to actually try to protect the temple from having to incur, like you said, additional costs. If they can verify the engineering of the current system that they're, changes that they're putting in place now will seamlessly intersect with the changes that they need to make in the future. So they're future proofing their design choices versus having to pay 2, 3, 6 times for something that the town is going to actually mandate them to do. So.
Yeah, exactly. Now's the time before we dig another hole and pour concrete over it. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think I don't have any concerns about this specific thing. It sounds like a good idea. This 2-tank thing makes sense to me. I would just say it would behoove you to go ahead and ask those questions and see if there's any changes you could do now instead of later.
What I would just ask in terms of like if we can approve the idea conceptually, and I'm going to check like these elevations, and I will be in touch with Jim so we can like, Jim, I need to like change elevations in here because of like the future connection for the sewer, but at least the concept idea is approved.
Correct. I'm with you. I have no further questions.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan as presented.
And I make a friendly amendment that the engineer also investigates the possible future sewer link to make sure that the client is protected from possible future investments in, a simple elevation change.
Dan, you okay with that amendment?
I'm not sure that's something we want to order, but we could certainly make it as a suggestion.
Fair suggestion. Suggest that the engineer investigate with the town sewage department to help limit the future impact on the client, looking at the sewage elevations and outflow from the secondary chamber.
Accepted.
So moved. Second.
Is your amended motion is set now. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Dan Kane.
Dan Kane votes yes.
Matt Wason votes yes. Thank you for your good work on this project and good luck.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, that brings us to our other 710 item discussion on basements and additions. So in your packet is a slightly updated local reg document that we've seen previously. And we just wanted to further this conversation to try to get this nailed down. Kevin, I know you had some thoughts on this, but I'm not sure if you're able to put those into a document to share. Then we are still kind of at this spot here. So What do we want to do? We got to get this nailed down and wrapped up so we can get it done and move on to our next important things like well regulations.
You're on mute, Kevin.
It's item D that I have a real problem with.
First page, look reg, last item D.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one that I have a real problem with that. That's just because somebody's house has a door versus a bulkhead, which still has a door. We're saying that that's, a difference and you'll be adding a bedroom versus something else. That's just not okay in my opinion.
Francis, does accessible exterior egress include a bulkhead?
It's egress. You can get out.
Yep.
Okay. My problem with D would actually be more about is included in the modification, because I think if it's pre-existing, that's whether it's a new door or an old door, I wouldn't want to consider it differently. But I know Kevin Davis has not been in favor at this point before. Are we good up until point D?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, I know we talked about the ceiling height last time. The
That's
7.3 versus the 7.
Yeah. So I did not see anywhere in the CMR that had a ceiling height specific of that. Maybe I missed it, but I just didn't see it. Am I wrong? And if I'm wrong, I'm cool with that. And I can be wrong. I have no problem with that. But I didn't see anything in the CMR that said 7.3.
Jim thinks you're wrong.
Well, I'm just checking because I don't want to be wrong. I think it's in the definition of a bedroom. I just want to pull that up. So in the definition of a bedroom, that section A kind of reads like the section right out of the bedroom definition. For new construction, a ceiling height no less than 7'3". And for existing houses, no less than 7 feet 0. So that's taken directly out of Title V, that A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. I'm wrong. I'm good with that. No, I'm totally fine with that.
Oh, no. It's like I say, it's the section of the code. And I think it probably mirrors the building code at some level as well.
So a curious question. So, and sorry, you should be on the second page of this handout. Is a kind of cleaned up version with a little different language. So make sure you're looking at that one where it says A, room counts and definitions, then the one is indented below it. And I think the only catch for the ceiling height thing is it's all pre-existing. So even if it was a bedroom back then, but it wouldn't be considered with current rules, as in it's a 7'1", and now they want to do some modifications to their house, and they want to come back and say, well, it's no longer a bedroom because it doesn't meet the 7'3" of new. Would we let that, or would we say, no, too bad, yours was built when 7 was the requirement, therefore, you know what I mean? Do we run into somebody who says, I want to no longer define that as a bedroom because it actually doesn't meet today's regs? Would we be okay with that?
So
or
the correlate.
Hold them to it because it was old.
And older structures have all different heights in the basement. So,
yes.
and occasionally we see that as a mechanism for not having it considered a bedroom. It doesn't have the right floor to ceiling height. And there's a remedy for that as well. I mean, you could take the housing code, so that's again another sanitary code that the board's responsible for, would allow you, because you've done this once before on a cottage up by the lake, to vary the housing housing code ceiling height. So again, whether you would use that, let somebody use that as an excuse not to have a bedroom, if you thought it was really going to be used as a bedroom, there's the mechanism for them to apply for a variance for that. So again, most people aren't trying to wiggle around it that much, so to get into that kind of nuance, but
Okay. So that definition is, as I said, it does come out of the bedroom definition for CMR. So we've got that. And then it comes to structures with the 9 rooms or more, which is where we do the typical divide by 2 count.
and so in the code, it's actually again, if you're trying to line it up with Title V, it would be in dwellings that have 8 or more rooms, or more than 8 rooms. Let me just make sure I get that right too. So 8 rooms is where it makes the distinction in Title V.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was done intentionally or.
Yeah. Do we have it off by 1 room? Is it supposed to be structures with 8 rooms or more? And the first one is for less than 8?
If you're going to try to line it up with Title V, well, let's see, unheated storage where the total number of rooms exceeds 8. So it in Title V, it exceeds 8. So I think the difference between the line number 1 and 2, 1 was to try to capture those dwellings you have, particularly around the lake, that have less than 8 rooms.
Yeah.
Because right now, Title V doesn't really speak to it. And so you've seen a lot of new construction and 2-bedroom houses, and then people. So I guess the only suggestion I would make is if you're trying to keep it lined with Title V is for number 2, change that to say total room counts exceeding 8 rooms.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be the only suggestion.
That makes sense. Just change the language. It doesn't change the definition, but change the language to more parallel Title V.
Okay.
I agree. So, as you point out, the sticky thing that got us into talking about these 2 sections was the smaller property that was on a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom system that just doesn't have a lot of rooms in the place. So I want us to look at this analytically and say, is this going to truly help us? Because reading point 1, 8.1, it says for existing structures in which total room count is 8 or less, a bedroom shall be X. Rooms meeting this definition will be counted as bedrooms unless they are clearly and consistently used as non-bedroom spaces. That one's a little, I'm not super wild about it because it says consistently used and clearly, and we always say, well, it's not about how you're using it, it's how it's kind of designed, but I get what that's trying to do. But where this kind of leaves us is, are we still counting those other rooms? Do we have to mention that somewhere? Or does it make sense? Maybe I'm missing it.
So if somebody came in with the kind of typical rebuild, the 2-bedroom rebuild, it usually has a living room, dining room, kitchen, and 2 bedrooms.
Right.
And let's say that was all up on a first floor and they have a basement they want to finish.
Yeah.
If I'm reading this right, if they put a dining room and a kitchen down there, they wouldn't count? Is that what that's saying? That stuff that's consistently used as a non-bedroom space or spaces? Because typically we see it as just a big open room or a media room or a gym or name your kind of room, den, family room.
I guess it's just these 2 sections are just, I guess, backing into the number of bedrooms differently because one's just counting rooms and dividing to get to get a kind of a phantom number, as it were, of this is how many bedrooms this house would have. Whether we look at the definitions or not, we count the rooms, we divide by 2, and bammo, you have to be within that on your septic system. For the smaller house, we're coming from the opposite direction to say we are counting exactly what rooms are defined as bedrooms unless some plan or design makes it clear to us that it's a non-bedroom space. It has a stove, it has a toilet. Then we are still counting the rest of the rooms to get a total room count. And so I think the curious thing for me is what happens when the room count switches from 8 to 9 as a part of a design. They fall under the new definition now? Is that what we're going to say?
So if you had a 3-bedroom house that had 8 rooms in it, because that's kind of the break point in the code,
Yep.
and somebody wanted to come in and add a 9th room,
Right.
at that point, with your current policy in place, it's 1 room more than would be allowed. A deed restriction would be allowed.
Because it's one. It's one.
One. So
over.
if they came in with 2 rooms, I'd send them to you to see you and talk to you about a deed restriction.
Right. So they would. So we're saying, yes, they would then fall into the second definition at that point.
Right. Because I'd have more than 8 rooms. We'd add up all the rooms, divide by 2, and round down.
Yeah. So I think that's my catch. It's the start of that 8.1 that says for existing structures in which that makes it sound to me like if my existing structure has 8, that is the definition the board will follow. And now I will present a plan with 10 rooms. But if I read that, then I will be following point 1, which is not what we would then do. So should this say actually, because we're talking about the changes that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do we need to say for existing structures, or should it just say for structures in which? Because that way it should be able to apply to existing or planned, correct?
Sure.
Does that make sense? Kevin, Dan?
It makes sense. So you say for structures in which the room count is by consistency.
And Matt, to your point, that's kind of how we've done that with these new smaller houses that get built. We kind of use this definition backwards, saying, "Hey, it was this house. Since you can't upgrade it to a fully compliant something else, it's only a 2-bedroom. Therefore, 5 rooms are kind of what's allowed."
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not codified. That's the only thing. Nobody's challenged us on it, but that's kind of if it makes sense going forward, it certainly makes sense going backwards, in my mind, anyway.
You're saying 3-bedroom, 5 additional rooms, 5 non-bedroom rooms is
No. So let's say you had a 2-bedroom septic system.
yeah.
And that's what we see a lot of these tear downs were old 2-bedrooms that the lots are so small that they can't get a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom system on. So they're stuck with the 2-bedroom with variances sometimes.
Yeah.
So in that case, is that we've kind of told them that they're limited to the 5 rooms, which includes 2 bedrooms.
So then,
But this definition would allow them a 2-bedroom system would allow them 2 bedrooms and 6 rooms, because that would be 8 or less total rooms, and we would follow this definition of the bedroom. Is that what we want?
I think what it's meant to say, at least when Lunenburg applied it, was, let's say you have that 5-room, 2-bedroom house, and you come in and want to add a room to the basement. The board's going to take a look at the card, the assessor's card, and say, look, you get 5 rooms now. If you add that room in the basement, we're considering that room another bedroom, and therefore it's now a 3-bedroom and you can't do it, or you need a deed restriction and it can't be a bedroom. I think that's how Lunenburg applies it.
Yeah.
Just to be able to have a way of dealing with the smaller houses.
So I think that's the switch, because it's like you're just trying to say any room with, but a basement, you could say there's no window. So I could put a big thing in my basement, and if there's no window, or for sure, I assume that means an egress window.
For that to be living space, correct.
Right. So if I just have a little, ceiling slat window in my basement.
Yeah.
Based on this, I could put multiple rooms in my basement, provided I keep my total count of rooms in the house at 8. Otherwise, the larger definition would apply, and I would be in trouble. So that's what I'm saying, is for the board. So, do we understand what this is really saying? And is it getting what we actually want? Because the way it's worded, you can have a 2-bedroom house with 6 other rooms, as long as none of those 6 other rooms meet this list of criteria for a bedroom. So you'd have a kitchen, you could have a dining room. We don't count bathrooms anyways. You could have a living room. You could have rooms in the basement. and living room becomes that starts to get squishier, right? What if it's that upstairs room that they're going to call a media room or a family room that looks an awful lot like a bedroom to everybody else? But that's clearly and consistently used. That I think that's the part that concerns me, because somebody says, well, that's how I use it. I have my TV and a couch in there. But I could put that in a bedroom and call it that. So is this nailing it for us, or do we need to kind of come back and figure out how to word it differently?
So the other thing I have is if you just say 4 structures, then you're going to have to say, for new construction, a ceiling height of no less than 7.3. For existing construction, no ceiling height of less than 7, unless it's an existing non-conforming ceiling height. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
And then I think the rest of it kind of flows. I still don't know if we've captured your problem exactly. That if, we'll use Bluebird as an example, because there's a whole bunch of senior living houses that are over there that have everything on the main floor, and then there's a basement. Some of them got finished, I'm sure, and others didn't. But that's the kind of thing that I would look at and go, oh, well, you've got a 2 or a 3 bedroom. Here's the septic that you have. Okay, now you want to add rooms in your basement. I only think there's 8. I only think there's 8 rooms that are there currently, maybe 7. You know what I mean? And they're not large houses. So that's where I'm leaning towards right at the moment. I don't know if we've captured that concern completely.
And maybe this is when we also want to have the discussion with more of our board present. But like I hopefully verbalized, I'll say it again. I think this board has to decide, do we want a 2-bedroom septic system to be able to have 8 rooms in their building if only 2 of the rooms technically meet this criteria for a bedroom, and the other 6 either don't meet the criteria or, quote, are clearly and consistently used as something else? I think that's a key question. If we're comfortable with it, then that's the language that's in there. If we're not, we need to change language. I'll let that hang.
Ken had a question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, that's okay. So, I think either we can remove, as we discussed, existing structures, or simply add just a line at the end of the existing structures under 8 or 8 or under. Just if changes or additions result in a total room count of 9 or greater, then the 9 or greater rules follow. So it makes it clear going, well, I'm 7 now, I'm adding 2, I'm over, but if your changes are going to bounce you from 8 and under to 9 and over, but then the 9 and over rules apply. I think that's pretty easy and covers it without any questions, and it's clear. I think as far as the bedroom rules, we can certainly be more restrictive, but it's pretty consistent between both the building code and the public health code of that definition of a bedroom, and they're pretty consistent of what is a habitable room and what is a bedroom. That I think while we can be more restrictive, I think we'd have a uphill battle if someone wanted to challenge us. We'd have to have a really good rationale of why we are more restrictive on the definition of a bedroom. I think we can, I don't necessarily need to in regs, but that clear and consistent use piece. Matt, I liked your piece of it's got a toilet in it. It's got a stove in it. That, yep, I can have a studio apartment with a stove and a toilet and a bed all in one big room, prison style. But those are the exceptions. That's pretty clear. It's if I've got an 80 square foot, if I get a 12 by 12 room with a closet and a window and heat and electricity, that's a bedroom. It'd be hard for someone to argue a clear and consistent alternative use when it clearly meets every other definition. I mean, I think we would be reasonable if we said, while we understand, as we usually do, we understand this is not your intended use, this clearly meets every other definition, and therefore, from the big picture long term, we need to treat it that way. If it's a second kitchen, then it's a second kitchen, and then that's a different set of rules. And I think it covers it. I think it's pretty clear. Again, I think just clarifying that existing versus new construction piece, I think we've got it. Pull the existing out, put a caveat if you bump from 8 to 9. Again, if I'm at 7 rooms, I'm adding 2, but I was 7, so who do I rule? A simple caveat. If your actions result in bouncing, then you have to follow the bigger space rules. I think that covers it.
Okay. So yeah, let's knock out existing, just say 4 structures. Have them both start with the same language, 4 structures. And then have a point below that frankly says, in any sort of remodel or expansion, the room count of whatever the final thing is what applies, that kind of thing. All the rule for whatever it's going to be, not just what you were. And I think that would answer any questions somebody would have.
Matt, could I just ask a question? You're going to start to see more ADUs coming along.
Yep.
And so, we've got one now that we're kind of going back and forth with the folks on, and it's a 4-bedroom septic system, and there's 8 rooms currently in the house, and they want to add another probably 5 rooms with 1 more bedroom. So now the ADU guidance we have from DEP for bedrooms would just have us add the 1 bedroom to the existing. In this case here, they can't do it because it's only 4 bedrooms, but they're telling us that they're going to remove one of the bedrooms, maybe make a master bedroom suite. That's neither here nor there, but it's going to end up having more rooms. And if it's for an ADU that's by right, it may be considered, and again, I say may because this is all new. It may be considered unreasonable not to allow the additional rooms that are needed. So is the board going to consider deed restrictions regardless of how you change this, or how? I guess that's just something you want to think about. You have to think about it tonight, but
yeah, no, you brought that up at our last meeting. That's a good point. We need a number for sure. We need a number 3 here that says for an ADU up to X square footage, whatever the state eventually decides upon.
Yep. It
will count as 1 bedroom towards the total system count, no matter what.
But will you grant a deed restriction then if, let's say, kind of back to the standard ADU we look at, it's probably got 3 rooms in it, a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen, if you will.
Yep.
And then if you add it to like a 4-bedroom house, now you're looking at 11, with 8 rooms, you get 11 rooms, which puts you into a 5-bedroom septic system.
Right. Which we would typically say no.
Okay. And
that's a good question, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So I, my memory would say that every plan I've ever seen, whenever they're adding rooms, when we do our calculation, it's always other rooms that are being added, not bedrooms. And in this case, we're specifically blatantly saying we're adding a bedroom with features. And how are we going to then count that?
Right. Or
how are we going to then apply our deed restriction rules? That's a great question, Jim.
No, you're going to start seeing more of them, and again, how you want to handle them is going to be, obviously the state, when they came up with the ADU regulations, were really trying to increase housing unit production. They want more housing units. And so they have sections in that regulation that talk about unreasonable regulations and prohibitive regulations. So clearly the regulation was designed to give people a message like, don't do certain things because they'd be considered either prohibitive or unreasonable regulations. So the enforcement of Title V is not considered an unreasonable regulation. And DEP gave us some guidance for how to apply Title V in those situations.
So
Yeah.
would we?
So, what? Oh, sorry, Kevin. Go ahead.
So would we be within our right to say if you're adding those things, it increases the bedroom count by one, and your septic system will absolutely have to handle that under Title V.
That's right. So again, in the one I'm talking about right now, the bedroom, the septic system is designed for 4. All of the totality of the plans that they gave us would indicate that they're adding another bedroom to the 4 they already have. So I already told them you need a new system. But then they came back and said, no, we're going to make one of the bedrooms in the existing house a master bedroom suite, open it up, put a master bathroom in there. So it gets it back down to 4. But I think the room count still would put you at 11.
We'll make it simpler. There's a house with 8 rooms total, 4 of which
Yep.
are bedrooms. If they asked us for an additional room, we would say, "You bet." We wouldn't even put a deed restriction on one more room, right?
Right.
Right. We'll start with the 9 bedroom house, 4 bedrooms, and they wanted to add an ADU. We normally would do a deed restriction for adding that 10th room, right?
Right.
In
Correct.
this case, the 10th room is a blatant 5th bedroom, not a playroom in the basement. So we as a board have to decide, are we going to continue it's just about the count and we're going to say, fine, we'll put a deed restriction, or are we going to say, no, you're over the Title V bedroom count and your system is no longer compliant?
And this is going to sound like we're gaming it, but typically when somebody comes in, let's say they had that 4-bedroom, 9-room house, they wanted to add the ADU with 1 bedroom on it.
Yeah.
If the septic system's only designed for 4, we would say no, because on paper, you're showing me you got 5 bedrooms, you can't have it.
Okay.
But if they were to say, those 2 small bedrooms at the end of the house, we're going to take the walls down, make 1 room. Now we've got 4 bedrooms total. We still may have more rooms that kick us into the bedroom count, but we have the right number of bedrooms. The ADU regulations would say just add that 1 bedroom to the existing bedrooms in the house. And if the system's designed to handle it, you're okay.
Okay.
That ADU may come with 3 more rooms or 2 more rooms.
Yes.
Which kind of deals with the room count. You are allowed to consider deed restrictions. That's why I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, okay. So even if they were within the limit, it wouldn't need a deed restriction for the ADU bedroom. We could still say you need a deed restriction because there are other rooms that you are adding.
Right.
Got it.
I'm sorry, I
Got
wasn't.
there.
And so that you just want to kind of keep that in mind how you want to handle that, because often the ADU is going to have more than 1 room. It's going to have and so as long as the bedroom count works, and it's big and the septic system's big enough and it meets the other criteria in Title V for the ADU, you still may have more rooms totally in the house, which may require you to consider a deed restriction to make sure people realize it's really the X number of rooms it's designed for.
So here's what I'd say.
I can see the wheels turning.
Well, yeah, it's almost, look at section A now, and A is actually focusing on kind of mostly bedrooms. And I think we almost need to mention, we need a section that's about bedrooms. How do we count bedrooms? And for the purposes of comparing it to your septic design, section A, bedrooms, and section B, rooms, just total rooms. It might be a short thing, but that's where we need to call out. So we need A1 is about bedrooms in small buildings. A2 is about bedrooms in larger buildings. A3 is about bedrooms in ADUs. How do you get a bedroom from an ADU? And then B, section B becomes just how do we do room counts, which is we count the rooms. And that's where we call out the, which kind of is B1 is about basement finishing, but B2 is that, I thought there was somewhere in here, where we say we don't count bathrooms, for example. I think I'm gonna forget. But section B becomes more clear about just as how we count rooms. In the main building, rooms are counted X. In ADUs, if different, rooms are counted Y. Or maybe we just count them the same way, but we're going to call it out separately so that for the purpose of deed restrictions, we have it in our paperwork as to say, we're going to apply a deed restriction because your ADU, while it only adds 1 bedroom total, we are going to look at it as the total room count for the property.
And kind of giving a nod to the fact that the state wants you to kind of encourage the living. Yeah.
We are going to let them go higher over the room limit but we're going to have a deed restriction based upon the bedroom is what's going to end up happening.
Right.
So
What's
it's not
the-
that we're going to, okay.
So maybe instead, what you do is you have A1, which is your 8 rooms or less, A2, which is your exceeding 8 rooms, and then an A3, which is for ADUs, we increase, automatically you add 1 bedroom to the total count of the house, and the other rooms are added to the overall count as determined from A1 or A2.
But that's where the state is going to say, if I have a 4-bedroom if I have a 4-bedroom system and I have a 3-bedroom house and I'm adding an ADU, okay, so my bedroom count is at 4, I can actually go over the total room count. They're trying to say, let people go over the total room count based upon the divide by 2 definition, right?
Well, they're saying that often will happen just because an ADU will have more rooms.
Right.
But I think what they're saying is you're just going to add the bedroom. So let's say it's a 2-bedroom ADU, you'd add the 2 bedroom. So it's they're not always just considered one. But I think that the crux is if in adding the ADU to the house, the room count exceeds the number of bedrooms allowed, but the actual number of bedrooms complies with the system, then a deed restriction probably would be the reasonable thing to do in an ADU, given the state's emphasis on housing production.
Instead of a firm no, your total room count based on the room count,
Right.
you're over. We're going to have
Right.
to say, no, actually, we're going to fall back to just counting actual bedrooms like we
Right.
do for small houses,
Right.
and you're good, but we're going to give you a deed restriction anyways.
So it's key to make sure the system can handle the number of bedrooms.
Yes.
And then the other consideration you need to make, and the code gives you the ability to make it, is a deed restriction a reasonable thing in this situation?
Yes.
So then we just worded that such for 8.3, which is for ADU, add the as identified in the plans that are, add bedrooms as identified to the plans to the total bedroom count of the house, and allow the other rooms to be included in a deed restriction if they're over the total count allowed. And then you don't have to worry about having all the separate other things. You can leave B as it is, expansions and additions, and then you're all good.
Yeah. I would still like a section somewhere on just how do we count rooms, because it's actually not really mentioned in here except for under A1. There's a comment on like kitchens or bathrooms is a non-bedroom space, but we don't count bathrooms anyways, so that shouldn't be in the list.
So maybe that paragraph that say rooms meeting the definition will be counted as bedrooms unless they're clearly identified as non-bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, dining rooms, or living rooms. And you could move that above section, just under have a paragraph under section A and say bathrooms are also not included in the overall room count.
So, and this is one of the differences from the prior version of this reg is that when we talked about the 400 square feet, in this version, that fell into the basement section only, as opposed to just the house. Is that what we want, or is the 400 square foot applying to anywhere in the house?
I think it's anywhere in the house.
I think so too. So let's have header B be about just rooms, where we can talk about what's counted and what's not counted, and include that 400 square foot definition there.
Okay.
And then section C can be about basements. And we still have to review that. Because based
It's
upon
already count. You know what? Reading what you just said, because item number 2 under 2B, B2 already says a main floor, blah blah blah. Any non-bedroom room excluding that exceeds 400 square feet in an area shall be counted as 2 rooms for the purpose of determining the room count. So it's already there. It's in 2 places.
I would rather have it in one. So these are what rooms are, and then frankly, expansion additions can have something, but that's where we have to decide, which we didn't decide last time, is does the main floor and a basement have different rules or not?
Okay.
And that's what I want us to think strongly about
Okay.
for our next conversation on this.
Okay.
Okay. I think we made good progress through the kind of the start and the construct of it, and that then leaves the last outlier, which was the other issue that got us here. It was small systems and basements. So think before our next meeting. Do we need to have a different subset of rules for a basement somehow? And do we want to consider somewhere the room that can't possibly be a bedroom, such as the house that we saw where they were putting the room behind the master bedroom, where you couldn't have access to it really any other way? Or as Jim has pointed out previously, rooms that can have easy exterior access added, like rooms over a garage, those kinds of things. Do we want something called out in our reg that says we're going to handle it differently, or we're not going to handle it differently? So that's what I want us to think about. We can go kind of vague and just say, nope, these are what rooms are, or we can go down the road of trying to kind of wall off those in-law apartments or exterior access apartments that could pop up. And how do we want to hedge that off? Or do we just say, no, we're going to trust people to do the right thing, and we're only going to say it's a room and move on? So unless there are any other burning comments somebody wants to make, I'm going to move on from this discussion. Head's shaky. Good answer. Can't find my agenda. Very good. Thank you. But good conversation. Solid progress. We're going to get through this one. I might not be the chair anymore when it happens, but we'll do it. Administrative matters. We did our meeting minute approval. Are there any other administrative matters? Take that as a negatory. Correspondence. Any correspondence to share? Kevin.
I did get a comment from a person in town, a constituent, about how the budget is presented in the warrant. And the confusion came in where they have simplified the warrant from where we're breaking everything out in our budget internally and how we're, keeping the e-checkbook and all that kind of good stuff. Not saying that there's something that's wrong, but I think the fact that the select board has simplified the warrant going forward, saying here's salary and here's everything else, it's confusing when they look at our e-checkbook area that we have salary and then a whole bunch of line items that obviously add up to what's in the warrant, but it's just a little off. So I don't know how we want to address that, if at all. But that was just some feedback that I got from a constituent.
And you're saying, when you say ours, you're saying like the health department section looks different than other departments?
The health department on the warrant has salary and then has everything else. And what I'm saying is that maybe what we do in our e-checkbook is have it so that it's salary and then we have all of the line items, but then there's a summary of those that add up to the part in the warrant that matches the stuff. So I'm just saying maybe adding a line of summary to get it so that we are open and showing all of the goodness of that, but then there's a way that we can summarize those things so it matches what's presented in the warrant. Does that make sense?
Got it. I'm going to have you follow up with Francis on that.
Totally.
Exact
But I just
definition that you're looking for.
But yeah, totally. I'll follow up with Francis. But I just wanted to let everybody know that I had gotten that piece of feedback and that I think a single line item added to our e-checkbook without deleting the detail, because I love the detail, might help us summarize things so that things matchy.
Got it. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other correspondence?
I don't know if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but Ryan Ferreira has given his notice, and he'll be leaving the town after town meeting.
Bummer.
Yep.
He carried us through a lot. All right. Any other board member updates or anybody else want to provide an update? Dan, go ahead.
Not an update necessarily, but actually a request for information. I'm not sure how long it's been, but I haven't seen a health department kind of activity report in a bit. I'm not sure when our next one was due. Francis, I'm not sure if you've got it or if you have a timeline of when the next one is ready to be shared.
I'll make one for the next meeting.
Okay, did we have I thought we had a regular schedule. It was going to be monthly or quarterly. I know I was looking for monthly. I know, but I think we decided on quarterly, but I'm just not sure do we have a schedule for when that'll happen, just so that we know what to expect and we're all on the same page.
I don't recall, but I can make one and we can just look at it at the next meeting just to have something on the books.
Okay, no, that'd be great. Just so we have a sense of.
Let's target it for quarterly for now. I think monthly is more work. I know you want to see it, Dan. Let's at least get quarterly and start getting it down. April would be the start of the fourth quarter for us. So if we could get second and third quarter or whatever from the last one was, we now have 3 complete quarters of FY25 that we can show and compare. That would be awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead, Dan.
Mr. Chair, if I can kind of tag on to that. I know we're coming up to our change of command, our handoff here at the end of our formal relationship with Neshoba. I'm just kind of curious, how has that transition been going? How much of that point, at this point, we're down to weeks rather than months, has come in-house? I mean, I would admit I would expect to see almost all activity being in-house at this point, since we're hours away from the changeover. Can you share what percentage is in-house versus still at Neshoba? Obviously, Jim kind of presented for the grease trap discussion tonight. But I was curious, like, how many are of Title V's and inspections and stuff have we taken in-house?
So right now, Jim is still doing septic. As we get closer, it's more of a case by case, depending on how complex the project would be. I mean, they still have to take in fees and applications, so a part of it kind of still needs to stay in the show for the time being. But me and Jim talk twice weekly about what's going on, what's coming in, what's going out. So we have a pretty good beat on how to handle anything that comes in.
If I can follow up, Francis, have you been doing the surveys and the plan reviews and site visits and all that with Jim as well, or has it just all still been on Neshoba?
We do site visits, but Jim's doing plan reviews.
Okay, then I'm going to throw it out there, because obviously that kind of handoff piece of trying to somehow gain all of Jim's 30 plus years of knowledge in a year. How comfortable are you feeling? How much transfer information that when the switch flips to plans are on your desk rather than Jim's and it's your show, how comfortable are you going to be managing that? I know that's a hard question to ask, and I apologize, but I'm just, as we all know, we've gotten some pushback from others. I just want to make sure that we are ready when the switch flips, that we are able to provide the services we need to.
I mean, it's a tough question to answer because the process that we've been through so far, and solutions have been brought up and shut down. So it kind of is what it is at this point. It's going to be a lot, but I'm just going to try to keep on top of it the best I can, and there's really nothing else I can do.
Are you feeling comfortable with the, not necessarily the workload, but the skills required to successfully manage our Title V process?
I can, but obviously it wouldn't be at the speed of someone, a professional like Jim here. And I'm more worried about time as an issue rather than the scope of work. The scope of work can be done. It's just a question of how far behind will we fall at some point, and how are we going to address things quickly once we hit a certain point of behind. And that's going to be a tough question to answer throughout the year.
Are there opportunities in the time we have left for you to work a little bit more closely with Jim and try to learn at his right hand as much as possible in the days left, to gain as much insight from the master before you're on your own? I'm just trying to figure out ways of making sure that you can be functional, efficient, and accomplish the other things certainly that are on the plate, and other ways that we can help get you those skills, experiences, hints and tips and tricks, and all those things that, the things that Jim glances at that you have to think about. Are there ways that you can kind of gain some of those skills to help you be successful when it's solo?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll probably end up chaining Jim to a desk in the office so he can't leave. So, yeah, me and Jim can talk about it more. I have a good handle on it, but it's hard to see nuances because it happens as it comes up, and every nuance is a little different. But being beside Jim, you learn a lot of the commonalities, and you learn the lay of land in Littleton and where those commonalities are in different sites in town. So that's helpful, but yeah, I don't have a better answer for you on that.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was I met with the town administration and a couple people from the select board. We were talking about our fee schedule. So our fee schedule, as you might recall, was created many years ago, kind of adopting some background from Neshoba, some from Acton, some from Westford. We were kind of looking at a variety. Put that together. This board then approved it. I believe that was before we actually hired a director, because we said we just wanted to have something in place to start from. So we've basically never used the fee schedule because Neshoba is still doing the work, or it's very limited as to what we've actually been doing. So we're now kind of looking back at the fee schedule, reviewing it, and some line items have come up that we're saying, well, do we do this? Are we going to do this? Is somebody else already doing this? Are the dollars in line? Kind of those kind of questions. So I've asked Francis to kind of start a review of that fee schedule. So we might have some changes come to this board, whether it be these line items aren't pertinent and should be reviewed, or they're duplicative, or how are we going to handle this? So just so this board's aware that we're going to start kind of over the next, I would say, couple of months, 2 or 3 months maybe, be reviewing that fee schedule for accuracy and making some updates to it. So town council also chimed in and did some good looking as to some of the fees on there. We might not actually have regulations in place to permit us to charge those fees. So again, we haven't charged any of those fees, so we haven't done anything wrong. But there, for example, we have a trash hauler regulation that this board put together and did a great job. But we actually have a fee on the fee schedule for dumpsters specifically, and dumpsters were not included as a feed item in our regulation. They are regulated, but not with the fee. So things like that. We're just going to come back to this board and say, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to amend the regulation to add the fee? Do we want to dispose of the fee? And those other questions, or somebody else is already taking care of it within the town. So just so this board's aware, that's going to be happening over the next several meetings. Any questions I can answer?
Actually, we when we get through the room count and things like that,
Mhm.
I wonder if town council would assist us in a review of our regulations for that so that we can make sure that she feels that, or town council feels that they are appropriate and defensible. Because I think it would be good. That comment made me think of that.
Yep.
So that way, we don't run into that later.
Yep, that makes sense. I have low concern because it's so grounded in Title V, which backs a lot of it up. But yep, we can ask. May as well. I have nothing further. So if that is all.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
And Kane.
Dan Kane votes yes.
Matt Wason votes yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much. Thank you.